Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds in England and we help people who are terminally ill or bereaved to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can check out our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. Each episode I have a different guest on. I ask them to share with us one of their songs. We talk about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip. And I also ask them to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Jemma Freese, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, today I'm here with Jemma Freese. Thanks for joining me, Jemma.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This is the Swan Song Project Podcast. For anyone who's new to the show, every episode have a different songwriter on. We do it in three sections. First, we have one of my guest songs, and we're going to have a chat about how Jemma wrote that. Section 2, I'm going to ask Jemma for a songwriting tip. And then section 3, we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Jemma in some way related to bereavement. So I'll hand it over to you now, Jemma. Do you want to introduce your song choice for us, please?
Yeah, so my song choice is my own song called I Am Beginning. It's not actually out yet, so it's out later this year off my album Shadowbox. Again, that'll be out later this year. So I wanted to choose a song, even though it's not out yet. I wanted to choose a song that's that I've done the most recently, because that's kind of then I can kind of talk about it and it makes sense for who I am right now. Whereas the music that I've done in the past, that was me then, and I've changed since then. So it makes more sense to do something where I am that person at this moment. And also, I get so easily bored with my songs. I'm really bad for that. With everyone else, I'm great. I've got loads of patience for, but I have the least patience with myself. So yeah, the song's called I Am Beginning, and it's about what it sounds like. It's just about beginnings. But I love open-ended songs that can be about anything, and you can apply your own story to it, apply your own message to it. When I listen to music and I can do what I've just described, and it's therapeutic in that way, because it's almost like you're then figuring out your own problems through listening to a song, even though the lyrics are vague, and you're doing a lot of inner work essentially. So yeah, it's about beginnings, and there's all sorts of different types of beginnings, like different changes in your life changes, losses, changes of identity, changes in sexuality, change. It's just it's about change and becoming a new person, or a different version of yourself, and feeling that feeling of, I don't know, most people, I don't know if you have this, but when you've got that change and then it's that beginning of the change, there's like a timeline of this new change, and I'm just talking about the very beginning, where it's like, oh God, I'm like this, or I didn't used to do that, now I do this, I didn't used to like this, now I like this. And it's just like you're discovering this new thing almost. And I'm such a self-analytical person that I'm just like, I used to like this, but now I like this. How interesting. So for me, it's about change of identity, because I recently had really severe physical health problems that came as a total shock. So it came out of nowhere. I also have mental health problems as well, but that was a lot that's been going on for a while, so it's not that much of a shock. So for me, it's a change of identity in physical terms, like there's things that I can and can't do, but actually it's changed my personality, because if you have a change in your life, you do new things, and if you do new things, or you can't do things that you used to do, of course that's going to change your personality, because you're not doing those things anymore. You're hanging out with new people and they influence you in different ways. So that's really what it's about. And there's not, there's some lyrics in the song, and then there's a big break where there's no lyrics, because I absolutely love jazz scatting, but I like doing my own version of jazz scat where I just use sounds. And again, it's that same thing of like, you can just take your own message from it.
Brilliant. So let's hear it now. This is I Am Beginning.
Woo!
Your words were fire, made gaps in my body, trapped behind glass. I became a museum. You were the backdrop of my subconscious.
Okay, brilliant. So that was I Am Beginning by Jemma Freese. Yeah, it's a really interesting song. And yeah, I really liked what you were talking about there. So it is an interesting theme, the new beginnings and how many of them people have in their lives and how different circumstances change it. Something that does come up quite a lot in the Swan Song Project with people we work with, when they get a terminal diagnosis. I mean, obviously you mentioned it with other health problems as well. It's the same thing, but when we get that diagnosis, it is like it completely changes a lot about who they are and they have to adapt and start again in some ways.
And I don't think people realize, like, again, like I cannot relate to that at all. That's but people don't understand how that changes your personality. And when you've got a massive change like that, from what I understand, I'm sure it changes your personality because of the other changes, and then people that you've been friends with, how they deal with this new version of you. Like they find it, they might find it really difficult. You might lose friends, and you're thinking, this is when I need friends the most. But you're changing, and some people can't really handle that.
Yeah, and how much of your identity is made up of your activities, isn't it? The things that you do are then what feed into your identity, both in the things that you learn and things you talk about and the way you see yourself. So again, like you see it a lot with athletes. I've heard, when people get someone who's like their life is based around athletics and be able to do something physically, then if they get an injury and they can't do that for a long time, it's like, then who am I when I'm not that person?
That's basically what happened to me. I wish I was an athlete, but I'm not. So I'm a keyboardist and I'm a vocalist as well. So fortunately, vocals is still fine, but basically it affected loads of things. It affected obviously keyboards with my hands. So basically it affected my hands, my neck and my back for like maybe the first 6 months of my health problem. Again, this happened out of nowhere. I'm sure it was secretly building up, but I just didn't notice it. I couldn't, open doors. I couldn't feed myself. I could barely dress myself. So my parents were feeding me. I had to open doors with my feet because I couldn't use my arms. Essentially, I had no strength in my arms. I couldn't lift a piece of paper. I couldn't clean my glasses. Couldn't tie my hair. All these tiny things. Suddenly you're like, oh my God, like there's so many little things that, I can't do. And obviously with keyboard, like that is my identity. I'm a musician. And not only that, but it's kind of like when you have this vision of who you want to be, I'm a vision. I want to be this, musician. I want to, thinking about success. And then all of that, like you were describing with the athletes, it changes. And then I don't want to be this kind of person that talks about positivity with such negative things, because I'm not. I don't like the whole silver linings thing. I'm like, shut up. But it has, it's made me, like I spend a lot more time with my family and friends than I used to. And, I don't take things for granted anymore, blah, blah, blah. Things that you kind of expect. I would never say that to someone who's going through health issues, because I just think, shut up. Like, this is a horrible thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about all that. It sounds like, it does sound like a very scary thing to have been through. And I'm glad that you're at a stage now where, I'm assuming you can play again.
Yeah, I can. So it's just like limited. So there's like, I'd say I'm at like whatever 40 out of 100, and when I was really ill, I like 1 out of 100. Like that's my best way of describing it. And I have to limit what I do, what I play, and what I can carry, equipment wise and stuff like that.
Has that changed the way you make music in any way?
Yes.
Yeah.
So with I'm Beginning, I'm trying to relate it back to the song. With that whole album, I actually made that whilst I was ill, and I did about 10 seconds a day. So because I had this illness, I had to drop everything. So I had loads of time, but I was also ill, and I think that's the worst thing. You can't do anything anymore. You're lying there, like, maybe you can watch TV. You're trying to distract yourself as much as possible. So and luckily I could still sing. So I did a lot of stuff that was like singing first, but all the stuff that I composed, it was like I did it like 1 minute a day, and then I'd have to rest for the whole rest of the day. And I would use like Cubase, which is a computer program, and it was linked to my laptop keyboard, as in like the alphabet keyboards. That's what I mean. You can link that to notes on a piano and stuff like that. So I didn't have to press down on my keyboard. I could just type like letters on the keyboard, on the laptop keyboard, and that would make a chord and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, like RTYH, and that makes the song chord. So it was a extremely slow process, but also I had to be very cut and dry, because I was like, you know, I'd do a take. You know, this was just demo, so it's not going to be the end result. I'd be like, even if, you know, I'd be like, okay, that's it. That's that part of the song. I can't overanalyze it and go, oh, that could be a little bit better. It's like, nope, that's the end. I can't do any more takes. So it made me so much less of a perfectionist. And I am a perfectionist at heart. So it's definitely changed the way that I make music. And you know, I use Cubase a lot more and Ableton, which I didn't before.
Yeah, well done for doing it, for persevering in those kind of difficult times. But yeah, I mean, I love those kind of stories of how people adapt. And you know, it's like, I guess people have their creativity, and then it's the means of expression that often changes, isn't it? And like, I mean, I'm sure there are conditions that affect people's ability to be creative, but maybe, you know, maybe they're a lot rarer. But you know, like the way of expressing that creativity has to change, but that doesn't mean the creativity's gone.
Yes, exactly. That creativity needs to come out. So I'm really, you know, I think it was just so I didn't go insane. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to make an album, I'm going to talk about my health problems and I really wasn't thinking of it. I was just thinking, I'm going insane. I wasn't thinking about the future. I was literally, the most future I was thinking about was what am I having for lunch, because if I thought later than that, I'd just be so even more depressed than I was, because thinking like, what am I going to do? I can't play in these bands anymore or anything. So my thing was like, okay, I'm only going to think about my next meal, which is such a, you know, weird thing. Like, I'm going to look forward to lunch, and that's it, nothing else.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of doing it. So how did this song come about in terms of like, did you know you wanted to write about beginnings and have that as a starting point, or did you have some musical ideas? Or
so I had the lyrics, I had all the lyrics, and I'd written it with a completely different, like I'd written those lyrics ages ago, and it wasn't about my health problems, it was about a different type of trauma, and I just had the lyrics and I had completely different music, but then I wasn't really happy with the song, and then I completely changed musical direction. Obviously, like you said, like with having a change in your life, you know, certain types of music that you want to make changes as well. So I had the lyrics, and I knew that it was just going to be about beginnings. And now I had this physical health problem, and it was like, you know, okay, actually this can be about just beginnings in general. So I chose this song specifically because it took me so long to do, and I actually chopped things around and changed them and stuff like that. So you can hear there's quite a lot of sections in the song. So for me, I always call it my Bohemian Rhapsody. Like, it's just got section, next bit, section, next bit, section. So I guess it's a through piece, but not really, because it's so choppy and changing. And I think at that time I was like, yeah, why can't I do this? Like, Queen did it. I mean, like, obviously they're famous, but do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to do like verse and chorus. I don't want to try and smooth the sections together. I was like, nah, I'm just gonna do like this. And the sections, when I first, you know, wrote it, I'd done like the first bit maybe, or the second bit, and you know, I didn't think that they were even going to be part of the same song. I was just like, okay, this section, this, totally random, and you know. And as stages kind of went by, I was like, oh, actually, this can all be part of the same song. But even then, like, the arrangement was different. Like, you know, the bit where I'm going D, 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 da, da, that was the beginning. And like, so I was constantly changing sections around. And because I had Cubase, you know, with any computer program, you can just select all the things you've recorded and move them around, which I find so helpful with arranging. You know, if you're with a band, it's kind of harder to do stuff like that, to remember, and then people make mistakes and to go back over it again. So as a solo composer, like, it's been really helpful. And with the DDD bit, again, vocals came first, and I don't know why I got into this, but I would write little notes on like toilet paper. I had paper. I don't know why. I just thought it was funny. I was like, ha, ha, ha. So I really wanted to. I was just in a really humorous mood for no reason, and I just kind of did this thing, DDD, and I sang that. and then I shortened it to something that I wanted to get the best out of it. So I might have had other dee-dee-dee-da-da phrases, but I cut it down. And I didn't write it out in a normal musical way with musical notes. I just wrote out dots and stuff like that on this piece of toilet paper. And then that became that section.
That's really interesting. Yes, I wonder. I guess I think that might be a part of composing and songwriting that a lot of people who aren't into it might not think about, is that, you know, sometimes you do have different sections of music that you might not necessarily, like, songs don't always come start to finish. This is where I start. This, you know, it doesn't all come out like that. Sometimes it is like, I've got this little bit of tune here, or this little riff here that I like, or this little bit of something over here, and sometimes you can just put them together. And it is really, what I was thinking was there anything in particular that made you tie these ones together? Because I'm guessing you have a wider pool of ideas that you've had over time. Was there something that made you think like, oh, this one will go with this one?
I think I have, so on Cubase I have this massive file, so it's a saved project which I can record into, and it's just called ideas with S's and Z's, and I just do all my ideas there. So there's no tempo track, there's no metronome clicking me, because obviously I'll have random ideas that aren't in the same tempo. So I always have this big folder, this big one project where I can go through, and there's like loads of ideas there. So it's like the equivalent of like a massive voice note or something. So I can listen through, and I think it's one of those things it's one of those things where I describe it in non-musical language. You know, I don't really think, oh, it's in the same key, so I'll do that. I didn't really think of it like that. Obviously the tempo has to work at some point with the previous sections, but I just thought the mood was better, and I think I could hear like the bit at the end. I can't even remember now, but that, you know, that sounds like an ending. I think I think it's really important to use non-musical language and musical language. So I'm like, that sounds like an ending. Okay, it is. You don't need to go into why. You don't need to. Everyone has a natural understanding of music because we listen to it when we're really young. So we're constantly listening to music and songs, and we have this feeling of like what a verse is, what a chorus is, what an ending is, what a beginning is. So you've got that feeling, and you can kind of play against the audience with those assumptions as well. But I like, especially with an ending, it's like I want to sound like that's an ending. I think it's like, yeah, the first bit for me, that sounds like a beginning. I can build it up. That sounds like the ending. That sounds like the big bit in the middle, and then all the after the dee da bits, there's a kind of another bit. And again, like for me, those two sections worked well together because it was, again, not a lot of and again, it fits, and then it goes back into lyrics again. So it starts with lyrics, has loads of dee das, and it ends with lyrics. So it's that kind of circular thing again.
So do you have it like, do you do like ideas coming out naturally and getting them down, either lyrics or musical ideas, and then like, is it a separate process then of tying them together?
Yeah. So
Yes.
I've got my project full thing. Like it's a massive, like it's like 80 hours, and it's just like all these ideas together. And then like when I'm like, oh, that sounds like a song, I'll start a new project, and I'll re-record what I've done, and then I'll delete the idea in the ideas folder, so I know that that's been taken out now, and that's a song, and I'll label that. So I know, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And is that then, are they like very consciously separate sessions for you, of like, this is a session where I'm just, ideas are coming out, I'm not thinking about how they're going to structure, I'm just, you know, scatting and jamming and things like that?
Absolutely. Because like I think like I've written music with people before who are going, okay, so we've done the first chord, you know, we've done chord number 1, we've gone to 4, we've gone to the 3, and I'm like, what? So not what I do. I go by my ear, my instincts. I mean, I went to music university, I've got like the knowledge of it, but I try and leave that behind when I'm composing and trying to be free. Because you might come out with something that isn't a chord. It's maybe like 3 notes in the piano, but 2 notes are weirdly close together, or it's not even a chord, so you can't always rely on musical knowledge. So yeah, like you said, like I think it's really important to have those kind of boundaries of like, okay, I'm just jamming, I don't need to think. I don't need to. If you want to, you can. And then it puts less pressure on. I think, I never set out to write a song. Some people do, and that works for them. But for me, like, that's too pressurizing for me to do. And again, like when I'm like, okay, that's now an idea I want to work on, open up a new project. That's what that's called. Like now I know that is the start of a song, and I have boundaries within that. Like that is that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting stuff, isn't it? And again, I find that a really interesting area of, and again, it kind of ties back to what we were saying earlier about having that creative instinct and the means of expression. And in some ways, the knowledge of music is a means of expression, isn't it? Like, I mean, it is. So you're saying it's using your creative energy and instincts, and like the musical knowledge is like, these are some methods that might help express this, but they're not necessarily all of the methods. And sometimes you can get bound by like, oh, well, this is in this key, so these are the chords that are most commonly used with that one, I'll go with that. And it can be tricky, can't it, to be like, actually try and forget all the stuff that I know and let this just go in a different direction.
I think for me it helped because I was composing before I knew kind of musical knowledge, so I know how to do that. And I just think like you've got to be the kind of person that doesn't look down on people who don't have musical training. Like I mean, loads of people, not just me as well, but strongly believe that everyone is creative. Everyone, you're just lucky, or you have the money to be able to go and study it, or like everyone's creative. Everyone has creative instinct. Everyone. So I just think it's important to just remember that and not get too tied up with ego and stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard to forget that musical knowledge, but I think the music that I listen to as well, I can tell that they would have done it in a similar way to this as well, because you just can't expect what they're going to do. And some of it is just sound based. It might be like feedback on a guitar, or it might be like someone just doing something weird with their voice that there might not even be a musical word for, especially with voice. Changing the tones of your voice, so many things that you might do instinctively in a recording session. They go, oh wow, can you do that again? You're like, damn, no, I can't.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun, I guess, of music, isn't it? Is that it's that being able to play with. I always remember someone saying about musicians don't work, they play, even though it is working, but it's called you're playing music, and that ability to try new things and see what comes of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned the what can you say a bit more about how you do the scatting type stuff and how scatting's typically a jazz technique, isn't it? I mean, you know a lot of the styles, so it's one. So I'm very novice in jazz. So could you explain a bit more about the scatting and about your?
I would bloody love to.
Yeah.
So I kind of got into jazz when I was 18 and 19. I first got into kind of blues, and Nina Simone and Ray Charles was played in my house, and I played piano before I sang. So I was playing blues and stuff like that. So I kind of got into it from that way. And I got into jazz, and then I got into singing like it. And my voice kind of at that time in my life, when I was 18 or 19, I was quite an unconfident person, so I had a quiet, breathy voice, which lends itself to jazz. So that's how I got there. And I started playing with different people. So I'm from Sheffield, so I started playing with different people in Sheffield and doing kind of jazz things, and then listening to more jazz and listening to Ella Fitzgerald and so on and so forth. Nina Simone is my favorite. So jazz scatting is just so you're just taking a solo. So you're viewing the voice as an instrument, which in other genres of music don't always do that. The voice sings the lyrics, and then there's maybe a guitar solo, and then da 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 da. But the voice is considered as an instrument as well, and it will take a solo. And most vocal solos are done using scatting, so they're making sounds out of their mouth. Just as, let's say, if you were a guitarist and you've got a solo, you're changing the tone. Maybe you're kind of hammering on stuff. You're doing some hammer on. So you're still singing notes, but you're changing the way that they sound, and that's just what scatting is. And there's a kind of history of jazz scatting, and certain phrases and certain words, certain syllables that are used. It's not like if you don't use them then you're breaking the law, but those are kind of you'd think of that as jazz. So for example, very like stereotypical, jazz kind of language, as well as like they use a lot of like wab wab way, again like wah wah and stuff like that. So when I went to uni, so I kind of had some experience of doing performance and doing jazz vocal performances, and I'd done a lot of and as well I composed myself. And so when I went to uni, so I did jazz as my minor, and I'd listened to a lot of jazz, so I kind of got gist of what it was. But I found out very quickly that I had my own language, and I just felt like this Scooby Doo Babba Bear wah 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 for me it didn't sit well with me. I was like, why am I? There's no laws, so why do I have to do what people have done in the past? Like, this is stuff from like 50s and the 60s, like it's like 2000 and whatever it was. So it's just like, why, I don't understand why it's not like developed that much. And there's a lot of like jazz vocalists who kind of use different jazz scat letters now. They use a lot of like K's and Q's and stuff like that, and they've been like influenced by maybe Cuban jazz and stuff like that. So there's so much different jazz all over the world, and they use different syllables because of the language that they speak. So there's all of that as well. So there's not really any rules, and I started to really realize that, and no one really teaches you that, like, hey, break the rules please. So that's kind of what I started doing. And I think with this song you can hear that I'm kind of using those specific syllables, which are really good for rhythmical stuff. So, and it just comes naturally, and it would come naturally to anyone. If you were singing, someone told you to learn a guitar solo on your voice, you would use certain syllables that help you pitch those notes and help you sing it rhythmically. So it's kind of like that as well. Does that help?
yeah, that's really interesting. Does it come out, does the notes that you're doing come out first, and then you choose syllables to
exactly
go with them,
at the same time?
Exactly at the same time, so it does just flow naturally.
Yeah, and I mean, I am an improviser, and I've had lots of experience in that, so I don't kind of hold back, and I don't really think about things. I just go, and I know that I've recorded all of it, so I can always cut the bits out that I don't like. I think being an improviser helps. Just constantly like always putting yourself in those situations where you're just making things up on the spot all the time. Yeah,
it's really interesting. It's one of the things that like I've listened to a fair bit of, but I can never really never seriously experimented with myself. It's interesting.
It's hard though, because you think that there's some kind of rule that you have to learn, or you have to go and study. It's like, no, you actually really don't. Like, you can listen to jazz stuff, but really if you just start improvising with your voice and sometimes you can use lyrics and you can break it up, that's still soloing. But I think it's not really about jazz, it's more about you, like, can you improvise, like, can you start practicing improvising, say to yourself, right, I'm just going to improvise right now, what am I doing? It is more about that. And can you as a vocalist, like, I am always changing the tone of my voice, doing loads of weird stuff. When I'm like joking around with my friends, like I do different voices, like a cartoon. So I'm so used to like changing my voice and stuff like that. And I do like spoken word and I do rap as well. So again, that's the same thing of like experimenting with your voice. Like that's all it is, really.
I really like. I'm a big Tom Waits fan, and he does a lot of stuff where like he starts with a vocal, just like some strange sounds he's making, and sometimes it's close to beatboxing at times, but with a bit of scat or a bit of anything going in there. And I think that's the way how he starts a lot of his songs. He'll record a little vocal thing and then loop it and then build a track around.
Absolutely, one iconic voice.
Yeah, genius. But yeah, it's again, when you think of it like that and put it in that way, that like it's allowing people to play with music without needing to, like, you couldn't say to someone like, here's a guitar, just start soloing, because they wouldn't know where to put the fingers and stuff like that. I mean, whereas with the voice, it's like, again, you learn how to fine tune how you hit your notes, but you can just start playing around with sounds probably more intuitively than you can with some other instruments.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think the voice is so great. And especially now there's kind of, with computer programs or pedals and stuff like that, like you can kind of play around with electronics and stuff. So there's like stuff that you can do like straight away, but you know, it is hard when you're learning an instrument. It just takes years. You know, I started playing piano when I was 10 and I'm 28 now, and I started singing when I was like 18. So, you know, it does take obviously a long time, but I think it's about how creative and imaginative you are as a person.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that, Gemma. So let's move into section 2 now, shall we? This is where I asked my guests to share with us a songwriting tip. So what would your tip be for us today, Gemma?
I think it would be what, I mean, I've talked a lot about songwriting. I think it would be about having a free flow way of songwriting. And I think it would be like finding out what way works for you the best. So for me, like I will press record straight away, and like even if maybe the first 2 minutes I'm kind of not doing anything, that doesn't matter, and then I kind of play around with stuff, and I can always chop it around, I can always delete stuff, and especially because I use a computer program, I can put it onto another instrument. So let's say I'm doing something on the guitar sound, I can put that on bass, I can and sometimes I'll even record all instruments at once and mute them apart from the guitar. So let's say guitar, bass, drums, I'll record them all at the same time, but mute the bass and the drums, and then I've got a MIDI for all of them at the same time, and then I can see what that sounds like. So it's for me, it's like seeing if using a computer program it's just got a lot more choice in there for sounds. So that's recording all the instruments digitally rather than actually playing them digitally.
So people I guess anyone who might not, it's amazing technology these days, isn't it? Like I'm a bit of a novice when it comes to technology as well. Like, I love seeing...
I know like my songwriting is very vague, but I think, you know, it is about like there's so many good things about technology, but also not to lean on it for your ideas. It's supposed to enhance what you already have. So, you know, I go to a lot of gigs, and you know, people using pedals, getting really into pedals. Like everyone's talking about Ableton and la 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 la, and that's all great. But some people they're just using these effects, and for me, there's no emotion behind it. It's just, oh, I've put this fancy reverb on or delay, and now I'm doing this to it, and now I'm doing this to it, and like. That's like showing technique rather than what's the song actually saying. So like, don't get worried about like, oh, everyone's talking about these pedals and Ableton and I don't know how to do that. It's like, no, but like, it's just another instrument. It's just what the fad is at the moment. If you can't, you know, you need to say something with your music. That's more important.
Yeah, but the being able to use some of that stuff, I guess it's another vehicle for people who you know, if you hear a drum beat in your head, but you don't have a full kit, or you don't have the rhythm to the coordination to play the drums fully, but you might be able to work it out.
It means that you can write for all instruments, and you might then be hired to do that. So at the moment, I'm writing. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm writing for an orchestra. I just felt like it, and again, because I've got a computer program, I've got my keyboard plugged into my laptop, and it means that when I press a note on the keyboard, it plays like a violin or whatever. So I'm doing that, and I know that, you know, if people like it, they might be like, oh yeah, can you write for this orchestra? You know, I've not had any classical training. I've never had this sort of training, but it just means that you might be asked to do some of that. You're creating your own future work. That's what I always think, like, okay, maybe I'm not getting paid for this, but you know, who knows, like what will happen. You're creating your future work, especially if you're a solo composer. You know, for me as well, like I love having control of all the instruments. I do write for drums and bass. I can write for everyone. For me, that's really important. It might not be important to you, so you don't need to even think about that.
Yeah, and again, it ties back to what we were saying earlier, isn't it, about that, you know, acknowledging the creative instinct and the technical instinct. So it might be that you have the creative instinct, you know, you might hear something and think, oh, that would sound really good on a violin, or that would sound really good like this, and if you don't have access to that instrument or the practical abilities to play it, but you can then hear it and you can create it.
It's like, I mean, I know it's expensive getting a computer program, so Ableton's a little bit, I think both Ableton and Cubase are around £500, and you can use them on a laptop. You don't have to have a Mac for them. But again, you've suddenly got an accessibility of all these instruments which we've never had before. But I never in a million years thought I would use Cubase or that. I always had like just my keyboard in an amp, and I had like my dictaphone, like, and I was recording things. And again, I'd have to hear back my own song, I'd have to either press play on the dictaphone, or I have to like just play it. You know, if I want to hear what a section sounds like together, section 1, section 2, I have to play it. And it is harder because you can't be an outside ear because you're playing it all the time. So it's just a different way of composing, I think, with using a computer program or anything that records something and you can kind of just sit and listen. You can be more analytical and kind of a bit more cutthroat with great.
Yeah, and also just for people who are new to these ideas, you can get lessons and courses in Ableton and Cubase and stuff, the same as you could with a guitar teacher or something like that, can't you? If people do want to learn
honestly,
that way.
I'd never ever learned those programs before, and yeah, I think again, like YouTube, like honestly, like so much stuff I just go, oh my god, how do you do this? YouTube. It's there because people want to make, people know that this is now a new thing that people want to do. People on YouTube want to get views and stuff like that, so they will post stuff about computer programs basically, and it's easier than you think. There's some stuff that you don't want to do, like for example, I'm not a producer. I don't want to know all these fancy things. I think that's important. Like, what are you using it for? I'm just using it for composing, so I know the pure basics. And I've not learned the rest of it. I could, but I'm like, I don't want to be that, so that's okay. Yeah.
That sounds really good. Was that your initial tip, or I feel like the initial tip was something else, and we went off on a bit of a tangent there. Was the initial tip something about which it was a good tangent, I think to cover. But was the initial tip something about
it's free? I think it's free flow composition. So you can record on your phone, dictaphone. Some keyboards have a little button that say record in it, and just go and just don't press stop, even if you're stood there for 10 minutes for 2 minutes, or even if you need to go for a wee, or even if you're going to make a cup of tea. It's just this idea of like, okay, I've got all these different things. You never know what you might come up with, and it's kind of pressure free, just saying, okay, I'm just gonna, for half an hour I'm literally pressing this and I'm just gonna see what happens.
Yeah, that's really good. I like having the time limit, what you said there, of like saying just for this amount of time I'm going to do this and just see what comes out. Because
I do that before I do some teachings over, which I probably shouldn't do. I'm like, okay, I've got half an hour to my lesson. I'm going to do 25 minutes and see what happens. And if you don't come up with something you've created, you've just practiced improvisation. You've just practiced composition. Like I always try and make sure that I'm in that way, so I don't feel like, oh, that was a waste of time. It's never a waste of time. Never ever a waste of time.
Yeah, that's really good. Brilliant. Next, Jemma, so let's move into section 3 now. This is where I ask my guests to share a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And what I do here is I put the link to the song in the description, so it's not a song you're familiar with. You can pause us at any point, go listen to it, and come back and we'll have a little bit of a chat about it. So what song did you choose for this section first, Jemma?
So it's by Caitlin LM, and it's called No Wasting Time. No Waste Time.
Cool. So the link's in the description there if you want to have a listen to it. Why did you choose this song for us? It's the first time I'd heard it when you sent it over, but it's a beautiful song.
Yeah, so Caitlin is a friend of mine, and she's lost both her parents recently. She's around the same, I think she's a bit younger than me, so she's around 26, 27. And I think, the song is about, how she now is living the rest of her life, really. And, the things that she wished, the wish that she had done, she wished she spent more time with them. But she's such an incredible person, and she's just full of love, and she's incredibly kind. And I think also the melody is really catchy as well.
Yeah, it's a lovely song. And some really, really nice sentiments in it that I feel are very, are very relatable to a lot of people. There was the line in it about doing what I said I wouldn't do and being who I said I wouldn't be, I think it is. And also, I can't exactly how it's worded, but then it's about, I said I was going to be happy. Along those lines, which just feels like such an apt thing, particularly with a bereavement. I think that's quite a common thing of people, wanting to deal with things in the best possible way, and it's not always easy to actually do that.
Yeah. And it's like, and like, it's just, I just think that she's so open about everything as well. Like on her Instagram, it's great, and it's not in a triggering way either. I think that's really important as well when you're writing about really difficult subjects. Is like how much of the lyrics am I gonna, she doesn't explicitly say what's happened, and I think there's a reason why. You don't want to trigger people, and she's like that on her social media as well. So she's just kind of, she said it how it is. She's like, oh, I'm having a shit day, and she talked about her emotions, but she doesn't say things that might be triggering. So it's just so mentally health aware.
Do you know how long it was after the losses that she wrote the song?
Quite recent, I think. Maybe like, I'm not sure, but I know that it was. I think they passed away at slightly different times, maybe a year after each other. So it's quite recent. I think it might be like a year or two.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful song, and I'm always admirable of people in those situations then writing something, and again, like say something that's, I'm sure lots of people will relate to, who are going through similar situations.
I think it's important, like, again, she'll echo this as well, and I've got a family member who like recently lost their mum as well, and I think this is what my family member gets a lot. People go, oh, you're so brave. So this is like, I don't want to be brave. I don't want to turn my pain into creativity. Like, I think it's really important to be like, yeah, it's great. Like, obviously it's amazing that Caitlin has done that, but I don't want people, and I'm sure she won't want people to think like, oh, that's what I have to do with my trauma. I'm gonna, no, I don't want to be brave. I don't want to spread the word.
I think it's everyone deals with things in their own ways, don't they? And it's like it's giving people space, but also options of how they might want to process whatever they're going through, and that might be just spending time by themselves, or it might be talking to people, or it might not be. It's everyone's so different, aren't they?
And I think there is this thing of like putting people on a pedestal who have done something, who have like done something incredible with their pain, and I completely admire that. But I don't, I think you should be admired for dealing with the process as well. Never mind if you've created something with it. Like, it's just, this person's dealing through this. Like, just, I admire you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
definitely. Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, Gemma. It's really interesting. Have you got, so you say when's the new album come out?
I don't exactly know.
Okay.
It's going to be, so what are we in? We're in Feb now. It's going to be before the summer ends.
Okay. I'll put your links and stuff in the descriptions anyway, so people can follow you and look up for the new album when it comes out.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben.
Yeah, that's been a pleasure, Gemma. Thank you. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back on the episode soon.